There's a moment every leader remembers. Not the promotion, not the win. The moment you realize something had shifted and you didn't know how to get it back. You explained instead of decide. You accommodated instead of leading. You tell yourself you're being supportive when really you're negotiating. And one day you look at your calendar, your meetings, your team, and think, when did leadership turn into this? Today I want to name that pattern because when you can name it, you can change it. Hello, I'm Andrea Dowd, and this is Purpose, Presence, and People. And I live at the intersection of leadership development and operations and executive coaching, where results matter, people matter, and good intentions don't move metrics. And if you've been a leader longer than 10 minutes, you already know your title does not automatically come with influence. So today is not about fixing your team. It's about the day leadership quietly slipped out of your hands and what it takes to take it back. Let's get started. I'm Andrea Dowd, leadership strategist, speaker, and former director of patient experience with a foundation in leadership and organizational development. I've spent my career helping leaders show up with presence, communicate with intention, and drive results through people, not pressure. This podcast is about leadership that's practical, human, and impactful. Let's begin. So when I say teams holding leaders hostage, I don't mean dramatic rebellion. I mean something a little bit more subtle. A leader being held hostage when the team, intentionally or not, controls the leader's choices through emotional pressure, avoidance, learned helplessness, or the famous performance game. Until the leader's job becomes appeasing the team instead of leading it. And if that stings a little bit, good. That's your leadership nerve ending, still working. Let me tell you why this is so common right now. Leadership has changed, and it's happening in an environment where technology is accelerating faster than leader systems can keep up. So what happens? Teams grab stability wherever they can. You see, people don't need you to have perfect answers. I can't say that enough. What they need is candor and how decisions get made, what trade-offs exist, and what really matters. When leaders don't provide this clarity to their teams create their own story and they're never accurate. Believe me, manager strain is real and it is quietly cracking in the background. Managers are carrying a brutal load, hiring, coaching, retention, results, often without the authority or the role clarity to match. Some leaders start managing emotions instead of outcomes. They're trying to preserve psychological safety. Now, don't get me wrong. Psychological safety is tied to motivation. In fact, PwC found employees with the highest psychological safety were 72% more motivated than those with the least. But here's the honest to God truth. Psychological safety without accountability becomes chaos, so you must balance the two. Our job as leaders is both human-centered and operational clarity. And so let me break down how these hostage situations actually form. There's 5 steps to it that I've learned in my career. The first one is ambiguity. The roles are unclear. Priorities are completed. No one really knows who was supposed to do it. There's accommodation where the leader compensates to keep the peace. Number 3, dependence. The team learns that the leader will rescue and absorb the extra work. Number 4, entitlement. They push back, and that becomes normal. That famous statement, "That's not my job." I've heard that one before. Number 5, this is the last one. It's called the leader capture. Leaders' behavior is shaped by fear of conflict. Now, if you're thinking this sounds like my normal Tuesday, you're among friends. Everyone goes through this. But here's the uncomfortable truth, that most leaders don't lose authority in conflict. You lose it when you over accommodate. Leadership rarely collapses dramatically. It erodes politely. You didn't wake up powerless. You became reasonable one too many times. You said, "I'll handle it this time. It's faster if I just do it. Oh, well, they're overwhelmed, so I'll give them space." Sound familiar? And while none of these are the wrong decisions, right? However, if repeated under pressure, they have taught your team something very, very dangerous. That leadership will absorb discomfort instead of directing it. You see, leadership didn't completely disappear. It just thinned. And the thinner it got, the more the team leans on you, not for direction, but for emotional regulation. Here's what leaders don't realize until it's costing them sleep. When you overfunction, your team does the opposite and underfunctions. When you rescue the team relaxes. When you accommodate repeatedly, your standard erodes. That's not a character flaw. It's a structural drift. And if you don't interpret it, leadership turns into exhaustion. How many of you guys out there are currently exhausted? I want you to take a moment and just think and write this with me. I'm going to give you 3 questions. I want you to think about them and I want you to write them down. Where do I explain repeatedly instead of deciding? Where did a temporary exception become permanent expectations? What am I doing that my role was designed for me to stop doing? If you're feeling a little defensive right now, that's okay, because awareness always comes before authority. And so let's name what's actually happening here. A leader is being held hostage when the emotional reactions of the team determine the leader's behavior, not the outcomes, not the strategy, but emotions. Hostage dynamics don't look like rebellion. They look like waiting. Here are some examples of hostage behavior to be on the lookout for. The delay of game. We're not ready yet. We just need a little bit more time. Can I get some additional training? Here's another one. The victim loop. This isn't realistic. We're overwhelmed. Can't they see how much is already on our plates? I can't take another assignment. The influence tax. We'll cooperate, but you pay in emotional labor. And you know what? Leaders start paying that tax with their energy, their standards, and their spine. You begin to respond with softening. Here's the pattern I want you to look for. Emotions trigger reaction. Reaction reinforces behavior. Behavior becomes culture. Delay becomes control. Overwhelm becomes leverage. And withdrawals become punishment. And leaders slowly shift from leading outcomes to managing reactions. Hostage teams don't push hard. They wait you out. If leadership feels heavy lately, this is often the reason why. All right. So nobody learns leadership by nodding. So let's do a quick hostage audit. I want you to grab your phone, notes, or paper, and I want you to title it Hostage Audit. Okay? Think about where you are with your team. And as you think through the next few questions, I want you to answer them honestly. Now, this is for you. Okay? Where am I over functioning for my team? What do I keep doing because it's faster, even though it's teaching dependency? What conversations am I avoiding, and what is it costing? Here's your final one. If I stopped rescuing, what would break? Now, I'll pause because I want you to say this out loud and fill in the blank. I think my team is holding me hostage through. Got it? Good. Now we can coach on something real. Now here comes the part leaders rarely say out loud. Most hostage situations are unintentionally reinforced by good leaders who hate disappointing people. You see, you didn't lose control. What you did was you traded it for harmony. You chose relief over resolve. Relief when you avoided the conversation. Relief when you softened the standard. Relief when you told yourself now isn't the right time. And that relief felt good in the moment. But it was temporary because the cost showed up later in the form of resentment, burnout, and confusion. Now, I want to make this next point extremely clear because I just spent an entire episode talking about the importance of compassion gap in leadership. Compassion without clarity isn't kindness, it's adaptation. Psychological safety without accountability isn't safety, it's chaos. Now, I want you to think about those questions that I had you write earlier. And I want you to answer them quietly. And I'm going to give you some sentences to go with it. You ready? If I stopped rescuing, my team would have to do what? The conversation I keep avoiding is the cost of avoiding is. This is the moment leadership either wakes up or keeps coping. When a team holds a leader hostage, most leaders try one or two things. They get nicer. But what happens is, as a leader, they disappear. Or they get louder, but in the process, lose trust. I'm going to teach you a third thing to do. I want you to get clearer. We're going to talk about coaching up. Coaching up is not about being nice. It's about refusing to let confusion masquerade as collaboration. It's clarity delivered consistently. I'm not looking for consensus. I'm looking for execution. I hear your concern, but the decision stands. You see, hostage teams thrive in ambiguity. And so we're going to start with operational clarity. I want you to decide faster, explain less, reinforce consistently. Let me demonstrate what good looks like. It sounds like this. Here's the standard. Here's what done looks like. Here's when I'll follow up. You see, it's not louder. It's not colder. It's just clearer. When leaders coach up effectively, they do 5 things. They clarify expectations. They limit the urge to rescue. They expose patterns. They enforce accountability. And they reinforce what matters most. If you continue to rescue, you are training hostage behavior, and you miss an opportunity to teach your team how to be independent. Let me give you a language you can actually use. Bring me options, not problems. No, not to complaints, to options. Complaints are not strategy. Support doesn't remove accountability. Leadership doesn't need more words. It needs fewer words used consistently. I want you to expose the pattern that you see without shaming anyone. Here's the coaching move that I want you to use. I've noticed a pattern. When we hit resistance, we pause progression and restart the debate. That's costing us time and trust. Let's change the pattern. This works because you're not attacking a person. You're naming a broken process, right? Accountability is not punishment. It's respect for the mission at hand. It's a checkpoint, evidence that they must bring, and consequences if it doesn't happen. Real consequences, mind you. Here's your script. On Friday, I need to see X. If I don't have it, we'll do Y. Because the work still must move. When leaders make reasoning visible, trade-off constraints, why decisions are made, that's when trust grows. Now, this next one is probably going to be the most useful tool you'll use this month. A 2-sentence reset that breaks hostage dynamics in real time. Here's what we're solving. Fill in the blank. Here's what happens next. Fill in the blank. I want you to think of your hardest reoccurring issue and fill in those 2 sentences with that problem. And then I want you to say 1 sentence you've been avoiding quietly right now. I want you to let it feel awkward. That discomfort is your authority returning. And this part is for all of you people pleasers. If your team tries to pull you back into negotiation, I want you to add, I'm open to input, but I'm not reopening the decision. Now, say it with love and not sarcasm. I know some of you may have a tendency to weaponize politeness, but say it with love. Now, let's go ahead and address the next thing. I want to name it directly. How do I know when I'm supposed to keep coaching and when is it time to stop trying? Here's the trick. Staying stuck in indecision is its own form of leadership failure. This next activity is not theoretical. I want you to think of one real person, not your whole team, just one individual who consistently creates drag, tension, or exhaustion in your role. That person probably popped in your head real quick, right? And if no one popped in your head, you're either very new or very tired. Now, I want you to draw a simple box. On one axis, you have willingness. On the other, you have ability. You have high will, high skill. People who fall into this quadrant, I want you to protect them. Give them stretch assignments. Keep them. These are your high performers. High will, low skill. This group, I want you to coach up and train and support. They have potential. They just need the skills to do the job. Here's a tricky one. Low will, but high skill. It's not a performance problem. That's a values problem. Low will, low skill. Well, that's not cruelty. That's clarity. The real question is, I want you to ask yourself this. Have I been coaching this person for their reality or for my comfort? Indecision is what teaches teams they can just simply wait you out. So now we're going to talk about coaching out. I know it's the part that we avoid until it's a 5-alarm fire, right? But coaching out isn't being mean. Coaching out is refusing to let one person's dysfunction become everyone else's job. The process is the same as coaching up. You're not ending a career. You're ending a misalignment. When someone understands the standard and is capable of meeting it and still refuses, leadership is required to move. Let me give you 3 conditions that may require a coach out consideration. Number 1, values break. That's broken trust, integrity, disrespect, sabotage. Number 2, the ability gap. You try and close it with support, but it doesn't. Even though you've given them extra time, you've given them training, repetitive actions, but it just doesn't close that gap. Number 3, the willingness gap. They can, but they simply won't. The humane path to coaching out looks like this. It's very, very simple. Name the expectation. Name the gap. Offer real support and set a clear window of time. Then decide. The ugly truth is this. Keeping someone in a role they cannot or will not do is not compassion. It's avoidance dressed up as loyalty. Let me end with a story. And this is comprised of leaders that I've coached over the years because I coach this so often, I have begun to see a trend. There was a leader, smart, thoughtful, trusted, deeply respected. But her team had learned something about her. If they delayed long enough, she'd take it back. If they complained long enough, she'd change her mind. If they pushed emotionally, she'd soften what needed to be done. if they waited long enough, the decision would reopen. So one day she came to me and she said, I don't know what happened. I used to lead. I used to be great at this. And now I feel like I just manage emotions. This is exhausting. And I said, okay, well, we need to change our approach. Now, we didn't start by firing people. We started by changing what she reinforced. She walked into a meeting where the team was doing what they usually do, the delay of game. And she said 2 sentences. Here's what we're solving. Patient flow is breaking and staff are burning out. Here's what happens next. We're implementing the new process on Monday, and we'll adjust based on data, not feelings. And when the negotiation started, she added, I'm open to input, but I am not reopening the decision. Whoa. That moment, everyone got real quiet. You know, the kind of quiet where you can literally hear leadership being born. Not because she was harsh, but because she was finally clear. Clarity only feels cruel to people who benefit from the confusion that existed. And then, of course, someone tested her, as a team will always test you. They pushed back. They sighed. They tried the old influence tack. And guess what? She held her position. 3 weeks later, her team hadn't fallen apart. They actually stabilized. Why? Well, because leadership had returned. Here's what I know after coaching leaders for many years. The most dangerous moment in leadership is not conflict. It's relief. Relief when you avoid the conversation. Relief when you soften the standard. Relief when you choose peace over progress. Because that relief, you guys, it's only temporary. And the cost shows up later in burnout, resentment, and lost authority. So here's the question I want to leave you with, and I want you to feel it in your chest on the drive home and sit with it. Not just tonight, but next week and next month. Think about it. Where in your leadership are you calling it being supportive when it's actually fear of being disliked? Because the moment you stop negotiating with hostage dynamics is the moment your team finds out what kind of leader they're really working for, and leadership comes back online. You've been listening to Purpose, Presence, People. I'll see you next time. In the meantime, I want you to lead with intention. Leadership lives in the moments that matter most. How you listen, respond, and lead under pressure. Take one idea from today and put it into practice. Thank you for listening. And remember, lead with intention, and I'll see you next time.